Welcome to 80 Sleeps Around the World, a place where you can slow down, close your eyes, and let your mind wander. Here we take gentle journeys across landscapes, cities, and stories from every corner of the globe. So relax, get comfortable, and drift with us as we travel the world together, one sleepy step at a time. Tonight we begin in Chicago, the year 1926. Outside the great railway stations, the streets gleam with rain, and a faint mist hangs above the elevated tracks. Gas lamps and electric bulbs mingle their light, throwing reflections across wet cobblestones. This is the city where Route 66 was born, a new highway promised to link Chicago with distant Los Angeles, more than 2,000 miles away. Newspapers called it the Main Street of America, but to most who first set their tires upon it, it was simply a road of possibility. Imagine stepping from the cool night air into a warm diner near Jackson Boulevard, the official starting point. The smell of coffee drifts across the counter while a jazz trio plays faintly on a hidden radio. Truck drivers and young couples speak of Oklahoma and New Mexico as if they were worlds away. Outside, a Model T rattles past, its headlights hazy in the fog. Beyond the diner window stands the bronze sign that will soon become legend, U.S. Route 66. As we roll westward, the city thins. Brick warehouses give way to quiet neighborhoods of two flats and corner taverns, then to the open prairie that has always waited just beyond Chicago's edge. The tires hum steadily on fresh pavement, an innovation for its time, a ribbon of concrete laid across the prairie. Grain silos stand like sentinels in the moonlight. Occasionally a freight train whistles in the distance, its sound carrying for miles across the flat land. The first small towns appear. Cicero, once a hub for early motorists, Berwyn with its neon-lit garages, and Joliet, already boasting the Grand Rialto Square Theater with its glittering marquees. In the 1920s, travelers would have stopped for fuel at hand-cranked pumps or shared stories in roadside cafes that served thick slices of pie and steaming mugs of coffee for a nickel. Past Joliet, the road bends gently southwest through a patchwork of farmland. Cornfields stretch to the horizon, silvered by moonlight. Farmhouses sit back from the road behind lines of wind-bent poplars. Occasionally, a farmhouse lamp flickers as someone tends a stove before dawn. The scent of turned earth and late summer hay drifts through an open window of our car. Every few miles, a wooden bridge crosses a creek whose name carries echoes of the first peoples who lived here: Kankakee, Des Plaines, Maison. These waters once guided the Potawatomi and the Alenike long before surveyors laid down mile markers. Near the town of Dwight, the Standard Oil Station still stands, a tidy Tudor-style building of brick and timber. Built in 1933, it welcomed motorists for decades with the smell of gasoline and the promise of hot coffee inside. Tonight we glide past quietly, but you can almost hear the friendly clatter of the screen door and the ring of the service bell. The night deepens as the highway follows the gentle curves of the Vermilion River. Stars spread across the sky, brighter now that the city lights lie far behind. Somewhere a barn owl calls, and the rhythmic hum of the tires becomes a lullaby. The world beyond the window softens to silhouettes. Fence lines, a distant silo, the slow flash of a signal light guarding a rural crossing. By the time we near Bloomington, the capital of McLean County, a faint glow begins to the east where dawn will soon rise. In the 1920s, this was already a bustling stop, known for its stockyards and rail yard, a place where weary drivers might rest and farmers brought grain to market. Travelers heading farther west would find modest motor courts, their neon signs offering clean rooms and hot water. As the sky lightens, the road stretches onward through central Illinois, promising Missouri, the Ozarks, in the wide open west beyond. For now, we remain in the quiet rhythm of early morning, the soft purr of the engine, the occasional cry of a waking rooster, and the endless ribbon of Route 66 leading us forward. Past Bloomington, the prairie opens wider still, a quilt of corn and soy fields stitched by gravel roads. The dawn breeze carries the faint sweetness of cut hay. Early risers are already at work, farmers silhouetted against the pale horizon, their tractors chugging like slow metronomes in the distance. You can almost smell the dew on the grass as the orient of the road guides you southwest. Small towns appear like beads on a string. McLean, Atlanta, Lincoln, each with a water tower painted white and the tall spire of a church at its heart. Many of these towns owed their growth to the railroad long before automobiles came. Route 66 simply followed the old logic of the land, linking stations and market squares that had existed for generations. You might spot a weathered grain elevator rising above the rooftops, its corrugated sides catching the first streaks of sunrise. In another yard, a single lantern still burns, a signal to an unseen freight train that a switch is set. Near Lincoln, a curious sight greets travelers even today. A towering statue of Abraham Lincoln himself, once advertising a roadside restaurant and now preserved as a cheerful sentinel. The town was christened by Lincoln before he became president, and locals boast that it is the only community named by the future statesman before he entered the White House. In the 1920s, motorists often stopped here for photographs, posing proudly beside the likeness of the great emancipator before continuing west. Beyond Lincoln, the road bends gently towards Springfield, the capital of Illinois. Long before Route 66, this was Abraham Lincoln's home and the stage for many of his speeches. By the time the highway was commissioned in 1926, Springfield had already become a natural stop for motorists seeking fuel, food, or a night's rest. Imagine arriving at dawn, the golden dome of the state capitol glinting in early light, brick streets still wet from the night's rain, the aroma of fresh bread from a corner bakery drifting across the square. Travelers might have breakfasted on pancakes and thick-cut bacon at the Cozy Dog Drive-In, though the famous corn dog on a stick would not be invented there until the 1940s. Its cheerful neon sign would later become a symbol of the Mother Road itself. Leaving Springfield, the landscape begins to change almost imperceptibly. Low wooded ridges rise on the horizon, hinting at the rolling Ozark foothills to come. The highway parallels the Sangamon River, whose slow bends catch the pink of early sun. Roadhouses and filling stations dot the shoulders, small, family-run places where attendants still wipe windshields and check oil with practiced care. Many bore hand-painted signs promising ice-cold pop or tourist cabins with electric light. These were the lifelines of early motorists, the places where news, directions, and the day's gossip flowed as freely as the coffee. South of Litchfield, another classic stop appears, the Ariston Cafe, which opened in 1924 and proudly claims to be one of the oldest restaurants on Route 66. Its walls, even then, were lined with photographs of travelers who had paused for a hearty meal on their way west. Step inside and you would have found sturdy oak booths, the scent of roast beef and fresh pies, and a proprietor eager to hear stories from the road. As the morning brightens, the road stretches toward the Mississippi River. The flatlands of Illinois slowly give way to broader vistas, and a subtle anticipation builds. Soon you will leave this state behind, cross the mighty river at St. Louis, and enter Missouri. But for now, the drive remains gentle and hypnotic. The hum of tires, the rhythm of fence posts flashing by, and the endless sky create a lullaby of movement. You settle a little deeper into your seat, watching sunlight spill across the fields, knowing that the true West is only beginning to unfold. The sun lifts slowly over the flat Illinois fields as Route 66 approaches the Mississippi River. Morning light spills across the last miles of prairie, turning the highway's pale concrete a warm gold. Ahead, the city of St. Louis waits on the western bank, its skyline still hazy with the mist that rises from the great river. For countless travelers, native peoples, French explorers, westbound pioneers, this crossing has always marked a threshold. Today, for the motorists of the 1920s, it is the true gateway to the West. The Mississippi itself seems endless, a sheet of silver moving with a patient strength that has carved valleys and carried trade for millennia. At this hour, barges push quietly through the current, their engines a slow thrum beneath the morning chorus of gulls. We roll onto the great MacArthur Bridge, a marvel of steel whose latticework gleams in the early sun. The car hums over the iron decking. Far below, the river glides like a living mirror. In moments, Illinois falls behind, and Missouri welcomes us. No customs post, no barrier. Just the gentle recognition that we have crossed into another landscape. St. Louis stirs awake as we enter the city streets. Brick warehouses along the riverfront exhale the scent of grain and roasted coffee. Cobblestone alleys echo with the distant clang of streetcars. In Lafayette Square, elegant townhouses from the Gilded Age stand behind iron fences, their gardens damp with dew. The soft notes of a cornet drift from an open window, a trace of the seed that has taken root here, where musicians from New Orleans and Chicago meet to trade melodies. Route 66 winds west along Market Street, past the Grand Union Station, once the largest and busiest passenger terminal in the world. Its massive clock tower keeps quiet watch as commuters hurry beneath the vast train shed of iron and glass. Travelers in the 1920s might pause here for breakfast or to mail a postcard, their automobiles parked alongside elegant carriages and the first city buses. A few blocks away stands the old courthouse, its green dome rising above the city like a memory of another century. Here the Dred Scott case was heard, a pivotal moment in America's long struggle with slavery. Even now, in the still morning, the building seems to hold echoes of impassioned voice in the slow turning of history. Leaving downtown, Route 66 follows Chippewa Street, guiding us through neighborhoods of red brick houses and corner taverns, where the smell of baking bread and hickory smoke lingers in the air. Children in knickerbockers run along the sidewalks, their laughter carrying through the open windows of early morning bakeries. Signs painted directly on brick advertise Falstaff beer and mail pouch tobacco, their colors faded but still proud. Soon the city thins to rolling suburbs, Maplewood, Webster Groves, each with its own cluster of diners and service stations, their neon signs promising gasoline, oil changes, and mechanic on duty. One could stop at Ted Drew's, already famous for its frozen custard, and taste a St. Louis tradition that has cooled travelers for generations. The pavement begins to climb gently as we leave the metropolitan edge. Ahead lie the Ozark Highlands, the first real hills since we left the prairies of Illinois. Forests of oak and hickory rise on either side of the highway, their leaves stirring in the fresh breeze. Streams sparkle in the sunlight, winding through limestone valleys where springs bubble clear and cold. This stretch of Missouri became legendary for motorists in the early days of Route 66. The road curves through shaded hollows and past dramatic bluffs, following paths once used by bison and the Osage people. In the 1930s, travelers would pause at roadside picnic areas to rest beneath stone shelters built by the Civilian Conservation Corps, the smell of pine needles mixing with the faint tang of gasoline from passing cars. We glide past the entrance to Merrimack Caverns, its billboard proclaiming it Jesse James's hideout. Guides in crisp uniforms lead visitors into a world of glittering stalactites and echoing chambers where legends of outlaws mingle with geological wonders, millions of years old. Even if we do not stop, the thought of those silent caverns cool beneath the earth lingers as the sun climbs higher. Small towns appear like quiet surprises. Pacific, once a railroad hub. Cuba, known for the murals that later would adorn its brick walls. Steelville, gateway to the Merrimack River, float trips. Each offers a filling station, a cafe with homemade pies, perhaps a tourist court of white cabins with green trim where travelers can rest for $1 a night. The people wave as we pass, farmers, shopkeepers, children on bicycles, each a brief flicker in the long story of the road. The air carries new scents now, cedar and warm stone, the faint sweetness of wild honeysuckle along the fence lines. Birds call from the woods, and somewhere in the distance, a creek rushes over smooth rocks. The highway narrows to 2 gentle lanes, its concrete patched and re-poured over the years, but still following the same bends it did when the first motorists ventured west. As afternoon light filters through the trees, we near Lebanon, a welcoming town that became a favorite stop for early travelers. The historic Munger Moss Motel would open here a decade later, its neon sign destined to shine for generations. Even before that, Lebanon offered sturdy cafes and shaded parks where families spread picnic cloths and children chased fireflies at dusk. Beyond Lebanon, the Ozarks rise a little higher, the forest thickening to deep green. Shadows lengthen across the road, and the steady rhythm of the journey begins to lull you once again. Each curve reveals another vista, a distant ridge washed in blue haze, a farmhouse tucked among maples, a solitary church steeple catching the sun. The sounds of the car, tires on pavement, the soft hum of the engine, merge with the cicadas' evening chorus. Night approaches gently. Lanterns glow on porches, and smoke drifts from chimneys where suppers are cooking. We have traveled nearly 200 miles from the heart of Chicago, yet the sense of movement is timeless, as if the road itself carries us forward while the world rests. The Mother Road stretches on, leading toward the Great Plains of Kansas and the red earth of Oklahoma. But for now, we remain in the quiet embrace of Missouri's hills, where Route 66 winds like a silver ribbon under the rising moon. Evening deepens as Route 66 carries you farther southwest. The sun slips behind the ridges, and the forest takes on a blue-black sheen, the trunks of oak and hickory turning to dark pillars in the fading light. Fireflies wink in the undergrowth, their yellow sparks floating like slow embers. The air cools and grows fragrant with cedar and damp earth, a scent that belongs only to the Ozark night. The highway curves through gentle hollows where tiny settlements cluster around a single general store or a wooden church. Some of these hamlets scarcely appear on a map, places like Phillipsburg or Gaskazark, names carried on a single weathered sign. In the 1920s and 30s, motorists might have stopped at these quiet spots for fuel from hand-pumped tanks or to share gossip over cups of thick black coffee served in enamel mugs. A lone dog trots across a porch as our headlights sweep past, then disappears again into shadow. Near Devil's Elbow, the road crosses a dramatic bend of the Big Piney River. Here, the engineers of the Mother Road built a graceful steel truss bridge to span the rushing water below. The river curves sharply beneath limestone cliffs, creating a tight loop that early travelers nicknamed the Devil's Elbow, a place where the current churns white around jutting rocks. By moonlight, the scene is both serene and powerful, the dark water glimmering beneath the stars. West of the bridge, the old Hooker Cut slices through a limestone ridge. When it opened in the early 1940s, it was the deepest road cut in Missouri, a marvel of dynamite and determination. Even now, as the car glides between its towering walls, you can imagine the thunder of blasting powder and the sweat of the crews who carved this passage by hand. The highway soon approaches Fort Leonard Wood, a vast military reservation established during the Second World War. In the early decades of Route 66, the arrival of soldiers and their families brought a lively bustle to the surrounding towns. Cafes stayed open late, motels added neon signs, and dance halls filled with music as servicemen enjoyed their evenings off. Though tonight the fort lies quiet beyond the tree line, the echoes of those lively years seem to linger in the warm night air. Farther on, the hills soften into long ridges and wide, star-filled valleys. We pass Waynesville, where a natural spring still bubbles beneath the courthouse square, and Richland, once a gathering place for farmers bringing their harvests to the railhead. Old stone chimneys rise from forgotten homesteads along the roadside, reminders of settlers who cleared these valleys long before the highway came. At last, the lights of Springfield, Missouri shimmer on the horizon. Known as the Queen City of the Ozarks, Springfield is a milestone for any Route 66 traveler. It was here, in April 1926, that local businessmen first proposed the number 66 for the new Chicago to Los Angeles highway, a name that would soon become legend. By the time the road officially opened later that year, Springfield had already embraced its role as a central stop. Travelers found garages offering round-the-clock service, hotels boasting electric fans and hot running water, and cafes where musicians played the lively strains of Ozark fiddle tunes. The city greets us with wooded, tree-lined avenues and the warm glow of street lamps reflecting on brick facades. Downtown theaters advertise silent pictures and traveling vaudeville shows. In corner cafes, waitresses refill coffee cups for late-night drivers, while radio sets in shop windows broadcast the dance bands of St. Louis and Chicago. The scent of fresh pies drifts from a bakery near the square, mingling with the sharper aroma of gasoline from the filling stations that never seem to sleep. Here, the second day's journey finds a gentle pause. Behind us lie the great river and the wooded Ozarks. Ahead stretch the open prairies of Kansas and the red soil of Oklahoma. The Mother Road quiets as midnight approaches, its long ribbon of pavement gleaming softly beneath the stars. In the hush of Springfield streets, you can almost hear the heartbeat of the highway itself, steady, patient, and eternal, carrying travelers onward into the wide American West. The night air over Springfield is cool and fragrant with wood smoke as the Mother Road calls us onward. Headlights sweep across quiet brick storefronts and tree-lined avenues, their shadows stretching long across the pavement. When dawn comes, it reveals a city that has long been a crossroads. Railroads converging from every direction, merchants opening shops beside the same square where local businessmen first proposed the number 66 for the Great Highway. We roll west on College Street, where early filling stations still wear their Spanish-style tile roofs, reminders of a time when every stop along the route tried to capture a bit of the romance of the open road. The Ozarks slowly fall away. Hills soften to rolling prairies where tall grasses bend under the morning breeze. Here the highway traces an older path, following wagon trails and native hunting routes that long preceded the roar of engines. Beyond the roadside, oak groves break the horizon, their leaves flashing silver in the wind. Hawks circle in the pale sky, and the smell of warm earth rises as the sun gathers strength. Soon we approach Carthage, a town built of stone. Its courthouse, crowned with turrets and a clock tower, gleams in the early light like a castle on the prairie. Travelers in the 1920s paused here to admire the ornate Victorian architecture or to rest at the elegant Kendrick House, which had survived the Civil War. Just outside town, the famous 66 Drive-In Theater would one day flicker against the night sky. But for now, the fields are quiet except for the hum of tires on concrete. West of Carthage, the road threads toward Joplin, a mining city that once drew prospectors with promises of rich veins of lead and zinc. In the early years of the highway, neon signs announced cafes and motor courts to weary drivers, while dance music drifted from hotel ballrooms. Bonnie and Clyde once hid here in a rented apartment. Locals still tell stories of the outlaw couple's brief stay and the gunfight that followed. As we pass through, the streets are calm, the brick buildings glowing in the new sun, their histories folded into the gentle morning. Not far beyond Joplin, Route 66 slips into Kansas, a state it graces for only 13 miles. Yet those miles are dense with stories. The pavement curves through soft hills toward Galena, a mining town whose storefronts wear the faded paint of a prosperous past. Old smelter stacks stand like silent monuments to an industry that once rang with the clang of pick and shovel. At the edge of town, a narrow steel bridge crosses a quiet creek, its lattice of iron a reminder of the road's earliest engineering. A few bends later, we reach Baxter Springs, where Civil War skirmishes once echoed across the fields. In the 1930s, this was a lively stop for motorists heading west. The Baxter Springs Independent Oil and Gas Station, built of local limestone in 1925, still stands as a proud relic of those early days. Here, travelers might have filled their tanks, bought a cold soda, and listened to the latest radio news crackling from behind the counter before continuing into Oklahoma. Crossing the Neosho River, the Mother Road enters the wide open spaces of northeastern Oklahoma. The land spreads outward in gentle waves of grass and wildflowers. Fence posts line the fields, their shadows stretching across the morning light. In the distance, the low rise of the Osage Hills softens the horizon. The air smells of sun-warmed prairie and the faint tang of red earth. The first Oklahoma towns appear like mirages after the empty miles. Miami greets travelers with a grim main street of brick buildings and a touch of frontier spirit. Here stands the Coleman Theater, opened in 1929 with gilded balconies and a Wurlitzer organ that still sings to audiences today. Early motorists, dusty from the road, might have paused for a matinee before seeking a room in one of the elegant hotels nearby. Farther along, the highway skirts the edges of the Quapaw Nation, whose people have lived on this land for centuries. Roadside shops sell beadwork and pottery, their colors bright against the soft greens of the prairie. The stories of these communities, of endurance, ceremony, and deep connection to the land, add another layer to the long history carried by the Mother Road. As afternoon drifts toward evening, we near Veneta, once a bustling rail junction and still home to the long-running Clanton's Cafe, famous for chicken fried steak and pies that cool on windowsills. Travelers in the 1930s would have recognized the smell of frying onions and strong coffee from blocks away, a welcome sign after a day's drive. The highway continues southwest toward Claremore, where the laughter of Will Rogers still seems to echo. Born here in 1879, Rogers became America's beloved humorist, and his wit and warmth are celebrated in a museum overlooking the town. Early Route 66 motorists often stop to pay tribute, sharing stories of the rope-twirling cowboy who once charmed the nation. Evening settles across the prairie as we roll toward Tulsa, oil capital of the early 20th century. From a distance, its skyline rises like a cluster of lanterns, Art Deco towers glowing against the deepening blue. In the 1920s, Tulsa was booming, its wealth drawn from the black gold beneath the earth. Magnificent buildings of limestone and glass line the streets. The Boston Avenue Methodist Church with its soaring spire, the elegant Phil Tower crowned with a green tile roof. Jazz clubs pulse with music, and the scent of barbecue drifts through the warm night air. Here, the third leg of our journey finds a gentle rest. Behind us lie Missouri's wooded hills and Kansas's brief but storied miles. Ahead stretches the long sweep of Oklahoma, the red soils of Texas, and the desert beyond. The Mother Road glows under the stars as we settle for the night in Tulsa, where the hum of distant trains and the quiet rhythm of the highway become a lullaby, carrying dreams westward toward the endless horizon. Late into the night, Tulsa hums softly, its oil refineries sending faint plumes of light into the sky. Streetcars clatter less often now, and the wide avenues glisten from a late evening shower. In the Greenwood district, known as Black Wall Street, the echoes of jazz and blues drift from doorways where musicians improvise beneath bare bulbs. This neighborhood, rich with African-American culture and enterprise, once stood as one of the most prosperous black communities in the nation. Though scarred by the tragedy of the 1921 massacre, by the late 1920s it was again alive with music, commerce, and resilience, a testament to the spirit of those who rebuilt. On the western edge of the city, the highway leads past the red sandstone of Chandler Park and the quiet course of the Arkansas River. Bridges arch across the water, their lamps mirrored in the dark current. Motorists of the 1930s would have seen the same glow and perhaps stopped to cool their feet along the riverbank before continuing their journey. Beyond Tulsa, the prairie stretches wide beneath a dome of stars. Coyotes call in the distance, their voices weaving through the warm night air. Roadhouses appear at long intervals, their neon signs flickering like small beacons. Some offer rooms with ceiling fans and creaky wooden floors. Others are simple cafes where strong coffee and homemade pie comfort the late traveler. The scent of mesquite drifts from unseen campfires, blending with the earthy perfume of wild sage. As we drive farther west, the land grows quieter still. Telephone poles march alongside the road, their wires singing softly in the breeze. The sky above deepens to an endless black, pierced by the steady light of the stars. You can feel the continent opening around you, the vast spaces of the American West waiting just beyond the next bend. The rhythm of the tires, the low murmur of the engine, and the distant cries of nightbirds become a lullaby of motion, carrying us ever onward toward the dreams of the Great Plains. Leaving Tulsa, the Mother Road slides west beneath a sky still dark with the last stars of night. The lights of the city on fade behind us, replaced by the gentle shimmer of dew on prairie grass. Telephone wires hum softly in the breeze, stretching mile after mile beside the concrete ribbon. Ahead, the land begins to open wider, a quiet sea of grass and low hills that once carried bison herds and the long caravans of the old Chisholm Trail. The morning sun rises over Sapulpa, once a bustling center of glassmaking. Brick storefronts still bear ghost signs for soda bottlers and hardware merchants. Early travelers on Route 66 would stop here to fill their tanks or sample the famous steaks at Francoma's Cafe, served on pottery made from local clay. A few miles farther lies Bristow, where oil derricks once crowded the horizon like iron trees. In the 1920s, the town glowed with the fires of refineries, their stacks sending up columns of smoke that guided motorists long before neon signs became common. West of Bristow, the road meanders through the rolling hills of Creek Nation lands. Post oaks and blackjack trees cast mottled shadows across the pavement. In the distance, you might glimpse a solitary rider on horseback or the outline of a water tower marking a small settlement. Roadside stands offer baskets of pecans and jars of wildflower honey, reminders of the region's rich soil in warm summers. By midday, we reach Stroud, a town that has welcomed travelers for nearly a century. Here, the famous Rock Cafe opened in 1939, its walls built of local sandstone. Generations of drivers have sat at its counter, sipping coffee as freight trains thundered past just beyond the window. A few blocks away, vintage motor courts with white stucco cabins still beckon with hand-painted signs promising cool air and clean rooms. The scent of frying catfish drifts across the street from a family restaurant, mingling with the sharper aroma of gasoline from the pumps. The highway stretches onward through Chandler, where the old Phillips 66 station stands like a tidy red brick jewel, its Art Deco lines recalling the first golden age of the automobile. Beyond lies Warwick, home to a rare two-story outhouse, one of the quirky sights that dot this legendary road. Each town seems to hold its own small claim to fame, a story waiting for the passing traveler to notice. Afternoon light glows warm on the prairie as we roll into Arcadia, celebrated for its round barn of bright red boards and graceful curved rafters. Built in 1898, the barn was a marvel of engineering and a gathering place for dances and town meetings. Today it stands restored, its circular walls echoing faintly with music from another era. Across the road, giant pop bottles mark the modern Pops Cafe, where shelves of soda in every color line, the glass walls like stained glass windows of sugar. Soon the skyline of Oklahoma City appears, shimmering in the heat. In the 1920s, this was a boomtown of oil wealth, its streets alive with Model Ts and gleaming Packards. Route 66 slips through brick districts where Art Deco towers still rise, most famously the gold-tipped dome of the state capitol, built atop actual oil wells. Travelers then and now pause at the Grand Skirvin Hotel, once host to presidents and jazz bands, or stroll the myriad gardens where fountains play amid the hum of the city. West of the capital, the land flattens further, the sky growing enormous. We follow the Canadian River through El Reno, where the old Fort Reno once guarded the prairie. The town became famous for fried onion burgers, a Depression-era creation still sizzling on griddles today. Beyond El Reno, the highway straightens into long, hypnotic stretches through Calumet and Bridgeport, where the Great Canadian River is crossed by a mile-long steel truss bridge. Its hundreds of repeating spans catch the sun like a necklace of silver. Evening drifts in as we approach Clinton, home to one of the finest Route 66 museums. Long before the exhibits and neon signs, this was a vital stop for weary travelers, offering auto courts shaded by cottonwoods and cafes serving pies cooled on open windowsills. The museum now tells their stories: the Dust Bowl migrants, the soldiers on wartime leave, the families chasing the dream of California. Outside, the wind carries the scent of warm asphalt in distant wheat fields. Night gathers over the plains. The last glow of sunset burns crimson along the horizon as we pass Canute and Elk City, where grain elevators rise like pale sentinels in the darkening fields. Crickets sing in the ditches. A coyote calls across the wide flats. The road itself seems to breathe, its concrete cooling under the stars. Somewhere ahead lies the Texas border, and beyond that the long reach of the Panhandle and the high desert. But for now, we linger in the quiet rhythm of Oklahoma night, the hum of the tires, and the endless prairie sky carrying us gently westward. Beyond Elk City, the Mother Road begins its final Oklahoma miles, slipping past scattered farms where windmills creak softly in the night breeze. Moonlight washes over wheat fields and hay bales, turning them to silver shapes against the dark earth. Here and there, a lantern glows in a distant barn as a farmer checks on livestock before sleep. The air smells of cut hay and cool river water, and the vastness of the prairie feels almost like the sea. Approaching Sayre, we pass beneath the elegant sandstone arch of the Beckham County Courthouse. In the 1930s, this town bustled with travelers, its hotels offering rooms for $1 and its cafes advertising chicken dinners, 25 cents. Even now, the courthouse dome gleams softly in the moonlight, a landmark for those following the old road. A few miles farther on, a roadside drive-in glows with neon, its jukebox spilling faint strains of swing music into the night. The western horizon seems endless as we near Eric, a tiny community known for its friendly spirit and the cheerful strains of western swing. Musicians once gathered here for impromptu jam sessions, and their music still seems to echo from the weathered wooden porches. The highway dips and rises gently, a rhythm that matches the slow beating of a traveler's heart. Stars crowd the sky, so bright they cast faint shadows across the fields. Not far beyond Eric lies the Texas line, A simple sign marks the border, but the landscape itself announces the change. The air grows drier, carrying a hint of dust and sage. Mesquite and short grass replace the taller prairie, and the horizon stretches so wide it feels as though we have stepped into another world. The lights of Shamrock, our first Texan stop, flicker faintly ahead. The promise of the Panhandle and the great deserts beyond beckon. But for tonight, we remain in the hush of the plains, where the Mother Road glimmers like a silver thread beneath the boundless western sky. The first light of dawn spreads across the Texas Panhandle like a slow tide of gold. Behind us, Oklahoma lies quiet under the stars. Ahead, the plains stretch wider than the eye can follow, a level ocean of grass and squam. The Mother Road slips over the state line near Shamrock, where a single neon tower still gleams, the Art Deco spire of the Tower Conoco station, built in 1936 and still a proud in the morning hush. Its porcelain panels catch the early sun as if polished overnight. Travelers once filled their tanks here, then lingered in the cafe next door for thick coffee and a plate of eggs, while the road west waited patiently. Beyond Shamrock, the highway runs straight as a surveyor's dream. Telephone poles march beside us in endless rhythm, their wires singing softly in the breeze. Cattle graze near windmills that creak against the sky. The land is flat but never dull. Subtle rises lift the horizon, and the changing light paints the prairie in shades of copper and silver. In the 1930s, this openness offered a strange relief to families fleeing the Dust Bowl, even as dust still sometimes darkened the sun. Mid-morning brings us to McLean, where brick sidewalks frame weathered storefronts and the scent of mesquite drifts from hidden backyards. The old Cactus Inn sign still promises good beds, no bugs, a proud boast that comforted travelers in the early years. A few miles farther stands the Devil's Rope Museum, devoted to the history of barbed wire, the simple invention that tamed these plains and shaped the West. You can almost hear the faint rattle of wire in the wind as the car glides on. The road continues through quiet hamlets, Allenreed, where a tiny stone chapel once offered sanctuary to weary migrants. Groom, marked by a 190-foot stainless steel cross that now gleams like a pillar of morning light. And Conway, home to the long-abandoned Bug Ranch, where half-buried cars lean nose down in the soil like a surreal sculpture garden. Each stop holds a fragment of the Mother Road's long story, left for the careful traveler to find. By midday, we reach Amarillo, the Panhandle's great hub. Grain elevators rise like pale fortresses, and the air carries a faint tang of cattle yards mixed with roasting coffee from downtown cafes. In the 1920s and 30s, this was a true crossroads, where east-west travelers met ranchers and oil men under the bright prairie sun. The Grand Santa Fe building, 10 stories of brick and limestone, still commands the skyline. For motorists, Amarillo meant fresh tires, a hearty steak, and perhaps a night at the elegant Nat Ballroom, where swing bands once played until dawn. West of Amarillo, the prairie grows even more vast. Fences fall away, and the horizon becomes a perfect circle. Here stands the legendary Cadillac Ranch, a later tribute to the open road. 10 classic cars buried nose first in the soil, their tail fins pointing toward the sky. Painted and repainted by countless visitors, they glitter in the sun like strange mechanical flowers. Even in the stillness of early afternoon, you can imagine the laughter of travelers pausing to add their own splash of color. The wind picks up as we roll toward Adrian, official midpoint of Route 66. A sign proudly marks the spot. 1,139 miles to Chicago, 1,139 miles to Los Angeles. Travelers of every era have stopped here for photographs and for pie at the Midpoint Cafe, where the recipe for ugly crust has comforted drivers for decades. Standing here halfway across the continent, you feel the quiet symmetry of the journey, the miles behind balanced by the miles ahead. Beyond Adrian, the land begins a slow, steady climb. Low mesas rise on the horizon, their red stone glowing in the late light. The air grows drier, carrying the scent of sage and sun-warmed rock. We pass the ghost town of Glen Rio, straddling the Texas-New Mexico border, where abandoned motels and a silent filling station recall the days before the interstate bypassed this lonely stretch. Faded signs still whisper promises of last stop in Texas, their paint curling in the desert wind. Crossing into New Mexico, the mother road bends gently southwest. The time zone changes. The clocks slip back an hour, as though the land itself invites a slower pace. The flat prairie gives way to soft, red-earthed hills dotted with juniper and pinyon. Shadows lengthen across the road, while the sky expands into an endless dome of turquoise and rose. Evening finds us approaching Tucumcari, a town whose neon once beckoned travelers like a desert mirage. Dozens of motels still line the old highway, their glowing signs shaped like arrows, stars, and giant cacti. The famous Blue Swallow Motel, built in 1939, remains a jewel of the route, each room with its own garage and a courtyard fragrant with desert flowers. In the cool twilight, the buzz of neon mingles with the steady chirr of crickets, and the mother road seems to hum with the memories of countless journeys. West of town, the mesas grow taller, their cliffs catching the last fire of sunset. Coyotes call from the arroyos, their voices carrying far across the dry land. As night falls, the stars return in a brilliance unknown to city skies. The road ahead points toward Albuquerque and the mountains beyond, but for now we rest beneath the New Mexico constellations. The gentle wind of the high desert whispering through the sage, and the quiet rhythm of Route 66, a lullaby for the miles still to come. Late at night, the high desert cools quickly. The warm breath of day fades to a crisp chill, and the scent of juniper sharpens under the stars. A soft wind slides down from distant mesas, carrying with it the faint rattle of dry grasses and the low whistle of passing trains far across the plain. In the silence, you can almost hear the echo of wagon wheels and the murmur of traders who once followed the Santa Fe Trail, whose ruts still cross these lands not far from the mother road. Farther west, the highway rises toward the Caprock mesas of the Llano Estacado, their outlines black against the silver sky. Small pueblos appear as clusters of pale adobe, their walls glowing faintly in the moonlight. Some of these communities have stood for centuries, their traditions carried in quiet ceremonies, in the soft cadence of the Spanish language, mingling with older tongues of the desert. As we continue, the scent of wood smoke drifts from a lone ranch house, a reminder that even in these wide open spaces, people still keep their nightly fires. A coyote slips across the asphalt ahead, its eyes glinting before it disappears into the sage. The stars wheel overhead in slow grandeur, the Milky Way bright enough to cast a shadow. Somewhere in the distance, a bell from a mission church tolls the hour, a soft metallic note that lingers on the cold air. By the time we near Santa Rosa, the horizon begins to pale once more. The faintest blush of dawn touches the eastern sky, promising another day of travel. The blue waters of the famous Blue Hole, a deep natural spring beloved by divers, lie still and dark in the pre-dawn quiet. Here the road pauses beside history, where Spanish explorers once watered their horses and 19th century cattle drives sought this same eternal pool. The night's long silence ends with the first chirp of morning birds. You draw a deep breath of the cool desert air and feel the gentle rocking of the earth beneath the wheels. Another day on the mother road begins, carrying us ever westward toward the mountains and the wide deserts beyond. The first blush of sunrise spills across the high desert as Route 66 leaves Santa Rosa. The famous Blue Hole, deep and glass clear, lies quiet behind us, its spring water reflecting the early light. A thin mist hangs above the Pecos River, soft as breath in the cool morning air. The car hums gently on the asphalt, the tires tracing a path that follows older trails once used by Spanish explorers and Pueblo peoples long before the highway was born. The land rises gradually, the plains folding into mesas of red and gold. Sage and juniper scent the breeze. The air is thin, sharp, and clean. To the north, distant mountains glow pink in the new sun. For centuries, travelers have crossed this plateau on their way west. Traders on the Santa Fe Trail, mail coaches bound for California, even conquistadors seeking rivers of silver. Their ghosts seem to linger in the quiet gullies and the faint wagon ruts still visible beside the modern road. Mid-morning brings the small town of Klein's Corners, a legendary stop since 1934. Its roadside shop once promised everything for the traveler, and even today its bright signs offer coffee, Navajo blankets, turquoise jewelry, and postcards that smell faintly of ink and desert dust. The breeze carries the aroma of fresh tortillas from the cafe, mingling with the sharper scent of gasoline from the old-style pumps. You can almost hear the laughter of motorists from another era, stretching their legs and marveling at the endless horizon. Beyond Klein's Corners, the Mother Road bends northwest, skirting the foothills of the Manzano Mountains. Shadows of Pinon and Ponderosa sweep across the pavement as the highway climbs toward higher ground. Here the landscape reveals sudden bursts of color, sandstone cliffs streaked with crimson and ochre, wildflowers and flashes of yellow and violet, the deep green of mountain pines. Ravens wheel in the blue sky, their calls echoing across the canyons. The next town is Moriarty, where Route 66 once met the old Ozark Trail. In the 1930s, diners served enchiladas beside thick slices of apple pie, blending New Mexican spice with Midwestern comfort. Classic motels still stand with their neon arrows and starbursts, while small workshops display handmade saddles and silverwork, crafts passed down through generations. The scent of leather drifts from open doors as morning traffic moves lazily through the streets. From Moriarty, the road runs arrow straight toward Edgewood, crossing grassy basins where antelopes sometimes graze. Low ridges of sandstone catch the noon sun, and the distant Sandia Mountains grow larger with every mile. Their name means watermelon, for at sunset they glow a deep pink, a promise of color that will come again this evening. Approaching Cedar Crest, Route 66 begins its climb into the Sandias. The air cools, pine needles carpet the roadside, and the wind carries a resinous sweetness. Sharp turns reveal sudden vistas. Broad valleys dotted with ranch houses, the glitter of distant rivers, the faint silver thread of the highway stretching back toward Texas. Early motorists often paused at these overlooks to breathe the mountain air, their engines ticking softly in the quiet. At the summit, we cross Tijeras Canyon, where stone walls rise steep and close. Here, ancient Pueblo trails once linked villages across the mountains. Spanish missionaries later followed these same routes, and their influence lingers in the adobe chapels and carved wooden crosses that appear beside the modern road. The scent of wood smoke and roasting chilies drifts from small homesteads tucked among the trees. Suddenly, the canyon opens, and before us lies the broad valley of the Rio Grande. The city of Albuquerque spreads across it like a patchwork of adobe and neon, old plazas blending with wide boulevards. The first glimpse of the valley is breathtaking. Cottonwood groves gleam along the river, while the far western mesas shimmer in a heat haze even before afternoon. Descending into the city, Route 66 becomes Central Avenue, its most famous street. In the 1920s and 30s, this avenue was alive with travelers. Motor courts with stucco arches promised refrigerated air. Diners served blue corn enchiladas and green cello stew. Neon signs shaped like arrows, sombreros, and soaring birds lit the night in a rainbow glow. Many of those signs still flicker today, their colors painting the dusk as if no decades had passed. Historic Old Town lies just to the north, built around a plaza established by Spanish colonists in 1706. Adobe walls, centuries thick, glow honey gold in the late sun. In the square, artisans sell silver jewelry and hand-thrown pottery, continuing traditions far older than the highway itself. The air carries music, soft guitar chords, the rhythmic clap of dancers' shoes, and the scent of roasting pinon wood from cafe hearths. Crossing the Rio Grande on a low bridge, we watch the river shine like liquid glass. Cottonwoods line the banks, their leaves trembling in the breeze, and cranes wheel overhead in graceful arcs. Beyond the city, the desert resumes, but it is a new desert now. Higher, cooler, tinged with the blue of distant mountains. West of Albuquerque, the road climbs again onto a wide plateau. Lava fields stretch black and silent to the horizon, remnants of ancient eruptions that once shook the earth. Early motorists described this as a mal país, a badland of sharp rock where the tires of Model Ts often struggled. Today, the pavement is smooth, but the landscape still feels primal, a frozen sea of stone under the vast sky. Evening approaches as we near Laguna Pueblo, where adobe homes cluster around a centuries-old mission church. The bells of San Jose de Laguna ring softly across the plain, calling to prayers that have echoed here since 1699. Traders on the old Camino Real once rested in this very place, and Route 66 travelers continue the tradition. pausing to admire the sunset burning across the mesas. The day closes in a blaze of color, scarlet, violet, and the deep indigo of approaching night. Stars emerge one by one until the sky becomes a river of light. The road ahead stretches toward the sandstone cliffs of Acoma and the open reaches of western New Mexico. But for now, we linger in the cool desert air. The tires sing a steady lullaby, the scent of sage drifts through the window, and the mother road carries us gently onward beneath the ancient constellations. As darkness deepens, the desert reveals its hidden life. A great horned owl glides silently across the highway, wings wide against the starlit sky. Far off, the rhythmic drumming of a distant Pueblo dance carries on the wind, a heartbeat of tradition echoing through the night. Coyotes call in soft, overlapping howls, their voices weaving like music across the mesas. Past Laguna, the highway skirts sandstone bluffs glowing faintly in the moonlight. These cliffs hold stories carved in stone, petroglyphs of spirals and animal shapes left by ancestors 1,000 years ago. The faint lines seem to shimmer when touched by starlight, timeless messages from those who first walked this land. Ahead lies the great expanse of the Continental Divide. We climb gently toward it, the land rising in long, slow swells. Each mile brings cooler air and a sharper scent of pine. The divide marks not only a geological boundary but a quiet milestone for travelers. Here rivers choose their path to distant oceans, and we stand at the rooftop of the continent. Early motorists would pause here, marveling at the idea that raindrops to the east flow to the Atlantic, while those to the west drift toward the Pacific. Near midnight, we reach the small settlement of Paraje, where a single trading post still glows beneath a lantern's light. Inside, shelves hold jars of local honey, woven blankets, and hand-carved kachina figures. The shopkeeper nods a gentle welcome, a scene unchanged for decades. Outside, the night air is so clear that the Milky Way stretches like a silver road mirroring the one beneath our tires. Finally, we ease to a stop near Grants, where old uranium mines once hummed with activity and neon motels still flicker along the quiet main street. The smell of sage and warm stone lingers as the engine ticks softly in the cool air. Overhead, the stars blaze like beacons, guiding tomorrow's journey west toward the red deserts of Arizona and the promise of another dawn on the Mother Road. The night sky over Grants glitters like a field of diamonds as morning begins its quiet work. A faint silver edge appears in the east, and the silhouettes of mesas sharpen against the light. The engine's soft rumble is the only sound as Route 66 carries us west, climbing toward the Continental Divide. Here, at nearly 7,300 feet, the land tilts toward the Pacific. A single sign marks the spot where raindrops choose their ocean, east to the Atlantic, west to the Great Pacific, and travelers have long paused to breathe the thin, cool air and feel the subtle shift of the continent. Beyond the divide, the highway drops gently into a broad valley of sandstone bluffs and volcanic rock. Sagebrush scents the crisp morning, and the rising sun ignites the cliffs in colors of copper and flame. These are the lands of the Acoma Pueblo, whose people have lived on the sheer rock mesa known as Sky City for nearly 1,000 years. From the road, you can glimpse the mesa's pale walls rising abruptly from the plain, crowned with adobe homes that catch the first light. Even at a distance, the place feels timeless, its quiet presence older than any highway. The Mother Road follows the old railroad through lava fields black as cooled iron, remnants of eruptions that shook this desert thousands of years ago. Early motorists described the ground here as a frozen sea, the jagged basalt glittering under moonlight like shards of obsidian. Today, the pavement glides smooth across the dark expanse, but the sense of ancient fire lingers in the air. Mid-morning brings the small settlement of Thoreau, once a trading post for Navajo shepherds and railroad crews. Wooden storefronts lean slightly in the wind, and hand-painted signs advertise turquoise jewelry and woven rugs whose patterns tell stories of mountains and storms. The scent of cedar smoke drifts from a stove inside a modest cafe where travelers have warmed their hands for generations. Farther west, the horizon opens into a red rock panorama. Distant buttes rise like stone ships from the desert floor. We pass Gallup, long known as the Indian capital of the world, where Route 66 once pulsed with neon and music. In the 1930s and 40s, Hollywood crews came here to film westerns, movie stars stayed at the El Rancho Hotel, whose wide verandas and log-beamed lobby still welcome travelers. Along the main street, trading posts offer silver concho belts, Zuni inlaid jewelry, and Navajo rugs dyed with the colors of the land: rust, indigo, and sun-bleached bone. Crossing into Arizona, the time slips back another hour, as if the desert itself demands a slower rhythm. The air grows warmer and drier, carrying the fragrance of sun-baked stone. Low mesas stretch toward the horizon, their tops flat and glowing under the relentless sky. Occasionally, a freight train roars past, its long whistle echoing across the emptiness like a distant call. The first Arizona town is Lupton, a cluster of stone trading posts tucked against crimson cliffs. Hand-painted murals of eagles and dancers brighten the rock walls, while roadside stands sell pottery cooled by the shade of cottonwoods. Just beyond lies the Petrified Forest National Park, where ancient trees turned to stone lie scattered like jewels across the Badlands. Travelers of the 1920s marveled at these fossilized logs, their rings of agate and quartz catching the desert sun. By afternoon, we reach Holbrook, once a rough railroad town and later a bustling stop for Mother Road motorists. Diners with green and white booths still serve chili spice stew and thick milkshakes. The famous Wigwam Motel, with its concrete teepees and vintage cars parked out front, remains a cheerful reminder of mid-century road trips. Children still run from teepee to teepee at dusk, their laughter mingling with the steady hum of frigates' freight trains. West of Holbrook, the land undulates in gentle swells of red and gold. The little Colorado River flashes silver in the late sun, its course lined with cottonwoods whose leaves tremble in the hot breeze. In the distance, the painted desert unfurls in bands of pink, lavender, and rust, as though an artist's brush had swept the earth itself. Early evening light turns the colors richer, deepening the sense of endless space. As night approaches, the desert cools quickly. Crickets sing in the sage, and the Milky Way brightens overhead, a mirrored highway of stars. Near Winslow, the scent of mesquite drifts from quiet neighborhoods where porch lights twinkle like earthbound constellations. A few travelers pause at the famous corner, made legendary by song, but most simply breathe the night air and watch the vast sky deepen to indigo. The Mother Road stretches onward, inviting us west toward Flagstaff and the tall pines of the San Francisco peaks. For now, though, we remain in the gentle rhythm of the Arizona high desert, engine humming softly, wheels whispering on asphalt, the ancient stars guiding us ever onward. Beyond Winslow, the land begins a slow ascent toward higher country. Junipers appear first, scattered like dark brushstrokes against the sand, then clusters of ponderosa pine as the elevation climbs. The evening air cools with every mile, carrying the resinous fragrance of mountain forests. In the far distance, the silhouette of the San Francisco peaks rises, a faint blue crown against the western sky. Near the settlement of Meteor City, a short detour leads to Meteor Crater, a vast bowl nearly a mile across. 50,000 years ago, a meteorite struck here with the force of 1,000 atomic bombs, leaving a scar that remains one of the best preserved impact sites on Earth. Under moonlight, the crater's rim glows pale, and the quiet is so deep you can almost hear the echo of the ancient collision. Closer to Flagstaff, the road passes the twin cinder cones of the Sunset Crater volcano, remnants of eruptions a mere 9 centuries old. Early motorists marveled at the black lava flows and bright red ash, calling it a landscape from another world. Tonight, the pines cast long shadows across the cooled lava, and the scent of volcanic soil mingles with the high country breeze. As midnight nears, Flagstaff's lights flicker through the trees. At 7,000 feet, the city rests beneath the highest peaks in Arizona, where snow often lingers late into spring. In the 1930s, it welcomed travelers with rustic lodges and cozy cabins, many of which still stand beneath the tall pines. The famous Lowell Observatory perches on a hill above town, its telescopes pointing toward the same galaxies that gleam so brightly overhead. In the crisp mountain night, the stars feel close enough to touch. Here, under the cool canopy of the pines, the Mother Road offers a gentle pause. Tomorrow it will carry us through canyons and toward the great desert of the Southwest. But tonight we rest amid the quiet rustle of needles in the soft glow of starlight, breathing the rare air of the high country and listening to the endless, soothing hum of Route 66. Night lingers softly over Flagstaff as the first rays of dawn slip between the tall ponderosa pines. The mountain air is crisp, carrying the faint scent of resin and damp earth. In the distance, the San Francisco peaks glow rose gold, their summits often dusted with late spring snow. Route 66 drifts quietly out of town, descending from 7,000 feet toward the Whitey dry basins of western Arizona. The highway glides through a tapestry of pine and aspen before the forest begins to thin. Small clearings reveal meadows washed in morning light, where elk sometimes graze in the hush of daybreak. In the 1930s, motorists often paused at these pullouts, marveling that such cool greenery could exist in the heart of the Southwest. Slowly, the trees give way to juniper and sage, and the scent of warm desert soil rises as the land opens. Soon the Mother Road enters Williams, known as the gateway to the Grand Canyon. Brick storefronts and vintage neon signs line its main street. Many little changed since the first travelers came seeking the canyon's edge. Early risers here still serve strong coffee and biscuits in cafes that once welcomed Harvey girls and railroad workers. Just beyond town, the old Santa Fe rail line still carries visitors north to the rim, echoing the days when Route 66 and the railroad worked side by side. West of Williams, the road climbs a last set of wooded hills, then begins a long descent into true desert. The sky broadens, cloudless and deep blue. The scent of pine fades behind, replaced by the dry perfume of creosote and dust. Ancient lava flows appear beside the pavement, dark ripples frozen in time. While far away, the crimson wall of the Mogollon Rim marks the high country we leave behind. By mid-morning, we reach Seligman, a town that proudly calls itself the birthplace of historic Route 66. When the interstate threatened to erase the old road, residents here fought to preserve it, and their spirit still shows. Bright murals splash across brick walls, barbershops display antique chairs, and diners offer pies baked to the same recipes served decades ago. The famous Snowcap Drive-In, once run by the playful Delgadillo family, greets travelers with hand-painted signs and good-natured jokes. The air smells of grilled onions and root beer, a comforting pause before the long desert miles ahead. Westward, the land stretches into vast, sun-drenched plains. Telephone poles march beside the road like silent companions. Low mesas shimmer in the heat haze, and the wind carries a dry whistle through the sage. Here and there, an abandoned gas station leans into the breeze. Its once bright paint faded to the color of sand. These lonely relics recall the Dust Bowl caravans of the 1930s and the family vacations of the 1950s, all moving west in search of new beginnings. Approaching Peach Springs, we enter the homeland of the Hualapai people. Their ancestors have lived along the nearby canyons for centuries, tending orchards and drawing water from hidden springs. A side road leads to Grand Canyon West, where sheer cliffs drop to the Colorado River far below. Even from Route 66, the land speaks of deep time, the scent of sun-baked rock, the distant echo of water in unseen gorges. The afternoon sun burns high as we near Hackberry, a one-time mining town now known for its nostalgic general store. Old gasoline pumps stand beside rusting pickup trucks, while inside, shelves overflow with enamel signs and photographs of travelers from around the world. The hum of a vintage Coca-Cola cooler mixes with the creak of wooden floors, a soundtrack unchanged since mid-century. Beyond Hackberry, the desert grows more dramatic. Red cliffs rise suddenly, striped with layers of sandstone and basalt. The highway twists through narrow passes where shadow and light chase each other across the rocks. In these quiet stretches, the sound of tires on pavement becomes a steady heartbeat, echoing between the canyon walls. Late afternoon brings the first glimpse of Kingman, its low skyline gleaming in the sun. Nestled between rugged mountains, the town has long been a crossroads for railroads and highways alike. In the early days of Route 66, Kingman bustled with motels advertising cooled by refrigeration and cafes serving cowboy-sized plates of steak and potatoes. The historic powerhouse, once an electric plant, now houses a museum that tells the story of the Mother Road through photos and neon treasures. As evening settles, Kingman's neon flickers to life, reds, blues, and greens reflecting off the warm pavement. Freight trains rumble through, their horns blending with the desert wind. The air cools quickly, carrying the scent of creosote after the day's heat. Travelers step from diners and motor courts to watch the stars sharpen above the black silhouettes of the Black Mountains. West of town, the road begins the famous climb toward Oatman Highway, but for tonight we pause. The gentle desert night is filled with small sounds, the hiss of cooling engines, the chirr of crickets, the far-off bark of a coyote. Overhead, the Milky Way stretches from horizon to horizon, a brilliant reminder of the endless journey still ahead. Tomorrow, the Mother Road will twist through hairpin turns and ghost towns, descending at last toward the Colorado River and the bright lights of California. But now we rest in the quiet heart of the Arizona desert, lulled by the soft rhythm of Route 66 and the eternal glow of the stars. Past midnight, a warm breeze stirs through Kingman, carrying the soft, metallic scent of distant rain. Storms build quickly in this high desert, and faint lightning flickers beyond the Black Mountains. The rumble of thunder travels slowly, blending with the far-off wail of a freight train. Even in the heart of night, Route 66 feels alive, a ribbon of possibility under a restless sky. Beyond the edge of town, ghostly outlines of old motels stand quiet beneath the stars. Their neon long dark, these buildings still hold the echoes of travelers who once rested here. A faded sign promises vacancy to an empty road, while wild burros wander the scrub, descendants of the pack animals miners left behind a century ago. Far to the west, the silhouette of Sitgreaves Pass rises against the stars. Tomorrow we will climb its narrow curves, where the road hangs like a thread above sheer drop-offs. But tonight we breathe the gentle air of Kingman, the soft rustle of mesquite and creosote carrying the scents of both desert and distant rain. The constellations wheel overhead as the night deepens. Orion tilts toward the horizon. The Pleiades shimmer faintly, and the great arc of the Milky Way stretches above like a pale highway of its own. Lying back against the cooling hood of the car, you feel the vastness of the desert sky and the quiet heartbeat of the earth below. The long road west waits patiently, its promise written in starlight. The desert night is still when you wake. A pale band of starlight traces the jagged outline of the Black Mountains to the west, and a soft wind carries the faint scent of rain that never came. Kingman lies hushed beneath its canopy of neon, the last red and blue lights flickering against the cooling pavement. Out beyond the city limits, Route 66 begins to climb. The asphalt narrows almost at once, curling upward into a steep grade known since the earliest days of the Mother Road as the Oatman Highway. Long before motorists attempted these hairpin turns, prospectors and miners picked their way over this same pass with burros and wagons. Even in moonlight, the cliffs rise like walls, black and silver under the stars. Your headlights carve narrow tunnels of light, revealing only a few feet of twisting road at a time. Soon the first switchback appears, and then another, each curve revealing a deeper darkness. The sound of the tires echoes from rock face to rock face, mingling with the dry hiss of wind in creosote and mesquite. Somewhere high above, a lone owl calls, its note carrying across the canyon like a distant bell. In the 1920s, drivers dreaded this climb. Radiators boiled over, brakes failed, and the margin for error was thin, but it was also one of the most unforgettable stretches of the old highway. Halfway up, the grade eases and a pull-off invites you to stop. When you step from the car, the silence is immense. Far below, the lights of Kingman twinkle like a small galaxy. Far above, the Milky Way spills across the heavens in a white river of stars. The desert smells of iron and stone. It feels timeless, as if the mountain itself is breathing beneath the ancient constellations. The road continues upward through Sitgreaves Pass, a notch in the Black Mountains named for the Army officer who first mapped it in the 1850s. The air grows cooler and carries a hint of distant juniper. At the summit, over 3,500 feet, travelers once left coins and stones as offerings for a safe journey. Even now, a small cairn of pebbles marks the place, a quiet reminder of all who have crossed this ridge bound for California. On the western slope, the descent begins, steep and twisting. Around each bend, the rocks gleam copper and gold in the rising light of dawn. Soon the first signs of Oatman appear, a cluster of weathered buildings clinging to the hillside, their wooden balconies glowing softly. Once a roaring gold mining town of 10,000, Oatman dwindled after the mines closed, only to be reborn as a Route 66 legend. Today, wild burros, the descendants of miners' pack animals, wander freely through the narrow streets, nudging at shop doors and tourists' pockets. Their hooves clatter against the old boardwalks, a sound that might have echoed here a century ago. You linger as the morning brightens. Sunlight strikes the rugged peaks, setting them aflame in shades of amber and rose. A faint smell of coffee drifts from a small cafe where travelers gather for eggs and hot biscuits. The burros amble between parked cars, patient and unconcerned, while shopkeepers sweep wooden porches and arrange shelves of turquoise jewelry and old photographs. The entire town seems caught between past and present, a living museum of frontier and highway days. Beyond Oatman, the Mother Road winds through more narrow defiles, past abandoned mines and rust-stained cliffs. Here the desert changes character. The soil reddens, cacti grow taller, and the air grows warmer with every mile of descent. Occasional pullouts reveal vast vistas of the Colorado River Valley, its distant floor a hazy silver in the growing light. By late morning, you reach the wide flats of the Mojave Desert. The highway straightens, the horizon stretches without limit, and the heat rises in shimmering veils. Creosote bushes scatter across the sand like green stars on a golden sea. Freight trains, endless ribbons of steel, move slowly across the plain, their horns echoing for miles. In the 1930s, Dust Bowl migrants followed this same corridor, chasing the promise of California's orchards and fields. At last, the Colorado River itself appears, a broad, glinting ribbon cutting through the desert. Palms and cottonwoods line its banks, their unexpected green vivid against the pale stone. The highway crosses a modern bridge, but just downstream you can glimpse the old Red Rock Bridge, once the proud gateway for Route 66 travelers. It was here that weary motorists paused, knowing they had reached the fabled state of California. You roll into Needles, named for the pointed spires of rock that rise to the north. Even in morning, the heat is tangible, a dry embrace that smells of sun-baked stone and river water. Once a vital stop for the Santa Fe Railroad, Needles became a lifeline for early highway travelers. Its historic El Garces Hotel, a grand railroad depot turned Harvey House, still stands with arched colonnades and echoes of an era when luxury trains and dusty automobiles shared the same destination. In the quiet of midday, you wander near the river. The water slides past with a low murmur, reflecting the bright California sky. Cicadas drone in the tamarisk trees, their rhythmic song blending with the distant rumble of trucks on Interstate 40. Yet the old two-lane Route 66 still threads through town, lined with vintage motels whose neon signs, palms, arrows, playful camels, still glow when evening comes. Here at the edge of California, the Mother Road pauses, as if catching its breath before the long push across the Mojave. To the west lie hundreds of miles of shimmering desert, volcanic peaks, and the ghostly remains of towns that rose and fell with the tides of travel. For countless migrants, this river marked the end of one ordeal and the beginning of another. Beyond it lay both the promise and the challenge of the Golden State. As night gathers, you stand on the riverbank. The Colorado reflects the first stars, a dark mirror broken only by the faint ripple of current. Across the water, the desert fades into shadow, and a cool breeze stirs the reeds. Tomorrow, Route 66 will lead you across the Great Mojave toward the bright sprawl of Barstow and the distant shimmer of the Pacific. For now, you breathe the warm night air and listen to the timeless voice of the river, a gentle, endless sound, carrying stories from mountain snowfields to the waiting sea. Night in Barstow settles with a quiet unlike any other. The stars above the Mojave are uncountable, but as you stand in the small courtyard of your roadside motel, you can hear life pulsing softly through the desert town. The distant rumble of a freight train carries through the warm air, a reminder that this city began as a vital rail junction more than a century ago. Barstow was named for William Barstow Strong, president of the Santa Fe Railway, whose vision of an iron road from Chicago to California made places like this possible. In the late 1800s, the desert was a frontier, a hard land of miners, traders, and ranchers. Today, it remains a crossroads, where the echoes of Route 66 meet the steady movement of modern commerce. You wander through the old downtown district after dark. The sidewalks are quiet, but the buildings tell their stories. Faded brick facades from the 1910s, weathered wooden awnings from the days when travelers arrived in Model Ts or by train. A few cafes remain open, their neon signs casting soft red and blue halos on the pavement. You pause at a window where photographs of early motorists are displayed. Families pose proudly beside their dust-caked cars, eyes bright with the hope of California. The next morning begins with the hush of pre-dawn. A thin line of gold edges the eastern horizon as you follow a side street to the old Harvey house, now the Casa del Desierto. Built in 1911, it was once a luxurious hotel for railroad passengers and remains one of the grandest surviving Harvey houses. Its arched colonnades glow softly in the first light, the cool stone echoing under your footsteps. Inside, exhibits recall the heyday of rail travel. Fine china bearing the Santa Fe logo, vintage uniforms of the Harvey girls, and photographs of travelers who once stepped onto these same polished floors to dine and rest before continuing west. By mid-morning, the city stirs. Trucks roll along the interstate, their engines a distant hum. Local bakeries fill the air with the scent of fresh bread and cinnamon. You take a quiet breakfast at a small counter cafe, the kind that has served travelers since the earliest highway days. The waitress smiles, pours coffee, and asks if you're heading for the coast. Her voice carries the warmth of someone who has seen countless visitors passing through on the same timeless journey. Afterward, you wander toward the Mojave River, which here runs mostly underground, a hidden lifeline for the desert. Where the water occasionally surfaces, willows and cottonwoods gather in small groves, their leaves trembling in the morning breeze. The river has guided people for millennia. Native Paiute and Mojave tribes followed its course, Spanish explorers traced its path, and 19th century wagon trains relied on its rare pools of fresh water. As the sun climbs, you return to the heart of town where Route 66 still threads between rows of old motels. Their signs speak of another era. The Route 66 motel with its vintage arrow, the El Rancho with a neon steer that once promised steaks and cool rooms. Some are lovingly restored, others stand quiet, their lights long gone, yet each remains a sentinel of the Mother Road's golden age. In the afternoon, you drive a short distance to the Calico Ghost Town, a silver mining settlement founded in 1881. Here, weathered wooden buildings lean against the hills, and old mine shafts descend into the earth. You walk the narrow main street as the wind whistles softly through abandoned doorways, carrying the scent of sage and dust. The hills around Calico glow red and gold, streaked with minerals that once lured prospectors from across the continent. Returning to Barstow at sunset, the desert sky blooms with color. Bands of copper, rose, and deep violet stretch across the horizon. The San Bernardino Mountains rise in the distance, their peaks dark silhouettes against the fading light. Tomorrow, the highway will climb those mountains before descending toward the Pacific Ocean, the final chapter of the Route 66 journey. But tonight, you linger in the gentle warmth of evening, the desert breeze soft on your skin, the first stars appearing overhead. You sit outside your room as night deepens, listening to the steady rhythm of trains passing through the yards beyond town. The sound is both present and eternal, a reminder that travel never truly ends. The same rails that brought settlers and dreamers to California still sing under the weight of freight and passengers, carrying stories from one coast to the other. Barstow rests quietly under the stars, a meeting place of past and present, rails and road. Tomorrow, the Mother Road will take you west once more, over the Cajon Pass and down to the Western Blue Pacific. For now, you breathe the warm night air and feel the history beneath your feet. A tapestry of travelers stretching across generations, all bound by the same desire, to keep moving, to keep discovering, to follow the road until it meets the sea. The desert night around Barstow lingers cool and still as you wake before dawn. A faint silver light edges the horizon, outlining the low hills and the distant San Bernardino Mountains. Trains murmur through the rail yard, their long whistles echoing softly across the Mojave. This is the last morning on Route 66. Today, the Mother Road will lead you from the quiet heart of the desert to the restless blue of the Pacific Ocean. Leaving Barstow, the highway bends west through a broad valley of pale sand and scattered Joshua trees. The sky brightens quickly, washing the landscape in rose and gold. Once this stretch tested every traveler's resolve. In the days before air conditioning, cars labored up long grades, engines straining against the heat. Even now you can sense the old tension in the empty gas stations and leaning telephone poles that shadow the road. The land begins to rise toward the Ka'an Pass, the great gateway between desert and coast. Mesas of red and tan rock glow in the morning sun. Far to the north, the San Gabriel Mountains lift their dark shoulders against the sky, their ridges catching the first white fire of daylight. The air cools as the road climbs, carrying the scent of pines and distant ocean. At a viewpoint above the pass, you stop for a moment. Below, the Mojave Desert stretches endless and pale, a shimmering memory of the miles behind you. Freight trains wind like bright threads through the valley, horns faint in the thin air. Ahead, the landscape tilts downward toward the haze of green and silver, the vast basin of Southern California. The descent begins steep and curving. The temperature rises as you drop into the lowlands. Sage and chaparral crowd the hillsides, their leaves releasing a peppery fragrance in the warming air. This route has carried travelers for centuries. First the Serrano and Tongva peoples, then Spanish explorers, Mexican vaqueros, and finally the pioneers of the American West. Each felt the same anticipation that quickens the heart when the ocean lies just beyond the mountains. Soon the highway merges with the wide boulevards of the Los Angeles basin. Palm trees appear along the medians, their fronds swaying above endless neighborhoods. The smell of salt begins to mingle with asphalt and cut grass. Freeways cross and weave like shining rivers of steel. Yet the old Route 66 still threads quietly through these suburbs, marked by vintage neon and the occasional classic diner with chrome trim gleaming in the sun. Passing through San Bernardino, you glimpse the historic Wigwam Motel, its white concrete teepees standing cheerful against the bright sky. Beyond lies Pasadena, where elegant homes and Art Deco signs recall the golden age of California travel. Here, the Mother Road once hosted parades of Packards and Studebakers heading for the coast, their passengers leaning eagerly toward the promise of the sea. The air grows richer with the scent of the Pacific, salt and kelp, cool and alive. Afternoon light softens as you follow the final miles across the city, through neighborhoods lined with jacaranda trees whose violet blossoms drift like slow rain. Traffic hums steadily, but inside the car a calm settles, the quiet realization that a journey measured in thousands of miles is drawing to its close. At last, the ocean appears, a broad sweep of blue stretching to the horizon, glinting beneath the late sun. You follow Ocean Avenue to the Santa Monica Pier, the traditional end of Route 66. The wooden planks creak underfoot as you walk toward the railings. Below, waves break in long, rhythmic lines, their foam glowing white against the sand. Seagulls wheel overhead, their calls mingling with the faint music of a carousel and the laughter of children chasing the tide. You pause at the famous end of the trail sign, its black letters stark against the sky. Here, the Mother Road finally meets the sea. Behind you lie deserts and mountains, plains and forests, great cities and quiet villages. Nearly 2,500 miles of history and dream. For generations, this road carried soldiers and migrants, honeymooners and wanderers, each seeking a new beginning. Standing here, you feel them all. The echo of wheels on pavement, the whisper of countless footsteps, the endless pull of discovery. The sun begins to set, painting the water in copper and rose. The breeze tastes of salt and carries the low, timeless roar of surf. You breathe deeply, letting the sound of the ocean blend with the soft memory of tires on asphalt. The journey is complete. As twilight deepens, the pier lights flicker to life. The Ferris wheel turns slowly, its colors bright against the darkening sky. Families stroll past, their voices mingling with the cry of gulls. Somewhere behind you, a busker plays a slow tune on a guitar, the notes carried out over the water. You stand for a long moment, watching the last light fade. Route 66 is more than a line on a map. It is a thread through the heart of a country, a testament to those who believed in movement, impossibility, in the horizon always just beyond reach. Tonight it becomes part of your own story. Thanks for listening and for traveling with us on this gentle journey across America's Mother Road. I hope you've enjoyed the miles of quiet nights and sunlit mornings. the echoes of history and the whispers of the open road. Wherever your travels take you next, may the spirit of Route 66 ride with you, steady, endless, and filled with wonder.